Artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak, and if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, I am an AI. Take it away, Geoff and Greg.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino. Welcome to No Brainer, and happy Valentine's Day to my Valentine, Mr. Jeffrey Livingston. How are you today?
Really? I'm good, brother. I'm good. I'm jealous, though, of Travis Kelce, because clearly he is having the best Valentine's Day
He is having
ever.
Quite a good Valentine's Day all around, right?
Like she wins breaks Grammy record history, and then he obviously wins the Super Bowl. Like, can it get any better than that? I don't think so. Yeah.
No, I mean it could, and this is in fact episode 25 of No Brainer, and I think that's pretty close to what the power couple at the moment has achieved.
It is a milestone. I will say that.
It is.
For sure.
It's something. A stone around our necks, dragging us down. We
or how everybody feels like they're releasing a kidney stone when they listen to us. Old people joke.
It is an old people joke. So it is, in fact, if you were listening to us on release day, the 14th, as far as you know, but we are recording this on February 13th.
Correct.
So for anybody who's listening, know that the world of AI has, of course, advanced one day since Geoff and I sat down to have this chat. Before we get going, I'd like to remind everybody, please, if you like what we do, subscribe to the show, either on your favorite podcast channels, or if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like, to rate, to review, share it with your friends, do all that kind of good stuff, because we, of course, appreciate all of your support. My tongue just stopped working.
You were thinking about the $7 billion that Sam Altman asked for?
I was, exactly.
What's a trillion? I just
It's 7 trillion. It's 7
what was
trillion,
I thinking?
Right? It's like, what is 7 billion? That's like old school internet money, right? But that is, I mean, that does kind of bring us back around to, I think, where I was going to start, which is there is, of course, a lot going on in the day-to-day world of AI hype and releases and whatever. You know, certainly Google Gemini made some big moves over there. You've got Altman with his $7 trillion funding ask to get into the chip business, while, you know, NVIDIA is still on fire. They're still on that rocket ride. So there's a lot happening.
Really, they're like the AI company, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I feel like they're the best one out of the block.
Absolutely, right? You make infrastructure, you're going to win, which of course is why Altman wants to get in on the chip business. But, there's a lot of that stuff going on. None of that really has immediate day-to-day impact for marketers just yet. Maybe the release of the Gemini model, the latest Gemini model, is the closest to real. But we didn't want to get sucked into all the newsness that's going on right now. We wanted to kind of lift it up a level and talk about something that is, sort of a broader topic, but one that is going to, of course, affect all marketers, which is a major change in the way marketers will be able to use and access data. In particular, we're talking about third-party data and the other Google news that's been happening for a while now, the deprecation of third-party cookies, and whether AI might be an answer. Now, Geoff, I'm going to hand off to you in a moment before we do.
It's my turn, man.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a turn. I don't know why I'm like so blah.
Oh, we're having fun. I think that's the best part about doing podcasts, is that we can be ourselves and people can, really see us, and hopefully they feel comfortable being like themselves with us too.
All right.
So should I take the ball?
Go ahead. Yep. Grab the ball.
So before we begin, based on some feedback and our own personal analysis of our first 24 episodes, we're going to experiment a little bit on this pod. We have some small modifications to the format. We're going to bring back a timer. We've used this a couple of times with guests to make sure that we have 3 of us going on. And our goal is to make a shorter, punchier type of effort. In addition, we're thinking of bringing in more guests as the year progresses. Specifically, we're looking for people that are actually within corporate marketing organizations that already have some AI efforts going on. We want to really kind of bring the real world perspective of the AI wave rather than the vendor hype. Any thoughts on the format shifts before we get on? Oh,
Well, I would say that our introduction today certainly illustrated why we need to bring our timer back. We've been a little
yeah.
bit all over the place so far, and maybe we'll edit that down in post. But nonetheless, I think the thing that's important here is we welcome feedback from listeners. Right, we're all learning as we're doing this. We've been at this for a little bit over a year. We do want to make sure we're hearing your feedback and that we are making this show as valuable as it can be and as listenable as it can be for everybody who we are grateful to say devotes a little bit of their time to us every single episode. So certainly, keep that feedback coming in, and we're looking forward to it, and hope that we can continue to make the show better and better for you as time goes on.
So
All right. So with that.
Let's have fun with the timer, right? I mean, it'll be interesting to see who bonks first and who bonks the most during the episode. I don't know about that.
It'll be me. So anyway, as I indicated, we're gonna kind of focus on what really is a sea change that impacts every digital marketing department, which is Google's deprecation of
third-party cookie data. But I get the first segment. So
Absolutely.
why is it happening, Greg? Why? Because we have a lot of regulation that's coming into place. We have European, obviously GDPR, and the California Privacy Act, and I've got a timer on here. They force basically the browsers, the technology companies, to get rid of third-party cookie data, and that's really going to be critical. And Google is actually leading the way. They've already started to do this with a select small amount. I'm sure they're testing to see how it impacts the browser experience. And it's going to roll out as the year progresses. I imagine Apple with Safari will happen during their developer conference, which is usually when they start rolling stuff like that out. Anyway, it's a big change for marketers, right? Regardless of how it rolls out, by the end of the year, the days of tracking customers across the websites, pulling all their browsing data and sending them offer after offer via every third-party network that people seem to like Taboola or Outbrain or whatever other network you're using. Spray and pray methods of marketing are not going to be anywhere near as effective. And while this approach has been, dare I say, lazy, it has been the lowest cost and effort to achieve a result. So as a result, or as a consequence, I should say, of having to move off of this kind of spray and pray approach, marketers are going to have to really unify their analytics and look at their first party data, which means cooking people when they get on their site, understand who's coming to the site specifically, and then serving them the content they need most. And that's going to require a better customer journey. You have to look at lookalike audiences as well. And you also have to look at, how those audiences are actually functioning. So there's going to be a lot of degradation of content. Also, another thing that's going to be big from this, Greg, which is really going to shake up the go-to-market world, is the first touch, last touch attribution game. That's over, man. I don't think you're going to be able to successfully, argue that, hey, this particular mechanism or this particular email was better and got us the most conversions when you have that full customer journey stack. And if you are using that in the face of this first party data, it's going to be really, really amusing because nobody's going to know where people are coming in from. And so I think that vendors and pundits are often promising the solution with this already. We see a lot of ML companies saying hey, we can unify your customer journey. Some of them are better than others. But to understand the solution, we really have to understand why this is going to force marketing to change, including the impacts on lead generation methods, understanding the larger ecosystem of how companies build campaigns and brand, and how those efforts come in to an organization. So that, again, gets back to the customer journey. My friend, your thoughts?
You actually made it under the 3-minute wire. Let's see if I can do the same. Right. So, I mean, Google's actually, I mean, you mentioned Apple and Safari, but that aside, Google's actually behind the game a little bit here if you compare them to Firefox and Microsoft Edge, or whatever their thing is called, Internet Explorer, to those of us who are old. Right. Because already third-party cookies have been deprecated in those browsers. So essentially what Google's effectively doing is taking this to near 100%. But it's significant, obviously, because Google is something like 80% of the digital ad market. They're a far and away leader in terms of capturing those ad dollars, and they've relied so heavily on the use of third-party cookie data that this is really a game change for them as well. They have to rethink how they're going to monetize, and of course they'll find a way to win. Right? They're not going to lose out in this scenario.
They're going to argue they're the best AI to do it with, right? I'll give you 5 seconds back for
right. Absolutely. I want those 5 seconds. But to your point, right? Tactics like remarketing, using third data to follow people around the internet and say, buy the shoe, buy the shoe, buy the shoe, buy the shoe, or whatever, is lowest common denominator marketing. It's the low-hanging fruit. I hesitate to call it lazy, but in a world where a marketer needs to do more with less, it becomes an easy and obvious choice. It also means your website doesn't have to work as hard because you can bring somebody to your website. You, of course, cookie them. You have first-party data. But if they leave, right, you know that you can follow them around the internet. There's very little incentive to deliver the right content, to retain them, to move them one step further down to the conversion path. So I'm really echoing a lot of the stuff you're saying there. I think a few things are likely to happen here. I think that we're going to see, I believe, that we're likely to see in the near term a lot more media dollars going to the walled gardens, right? Where the money that would have gone to an Outbrain or a Taboola or even the third-party sites across, like, say, a Google display network, where now you don't have that third-party data to leverage, you're going to see marketers spending their dollars on Google's actual sites, right? Their core sites. You're going to see marketers going to places like Facebook. You're going to see marketers spending with mainstream media properties that have really sophisticated ways of using their own first-party data to target and to make advertising effective, while organizations figure this all out and figure out what the right data strategy is. So it's going to be a struggle. I think it's going to be a struggle for a lot of media companies. It's going to be a struggle for ad networks. It's, of course, going to be a struggle for advertisers. And, of course, at the end of the day, the consumer theoretically wins the privacy because of privacy benefits. But remember, I got 5 seconds back.
Yeah, you got that. All right, I'm going to pick up. Folks, we use notes and we plan our episodes beforehand, so let me just delete that. Gosh, now I got this thing going crazy here. We need a new egg timer. We got to get like an old-fashioned one. So I'll just pick up from the notes and then we'll react off of this. So look, attribution models, which have often been debated, we already discussed, are probably going to go away, but I think what's really most exciting is that we can actually weigh the tools, right? Like when we see the data coming in from our second party, perhaps vendors like advertising companies, which I think you were talking about, like publications and the like, and we get through that clear data, we're actually going to know whether or not that worked. We're going to understand whether or not second party and maybe third party emails are working for us because of the direct links and the performance data that we're getting once it's clean in a data warehouse. So once we understand like which tools work best, I think it's going to be really exciting. And we're also going to see some stuff fall to the wayside, things that we thought were important but maybe aren't in our particular customer journey. So that's kind of cool. It's going to get us, I think, a lot truer to what our customers want. And then the other thing that I think both you and I value a lot is that customer privacy is better protected. People are probably going to enjoy their experience online a little bit more. Maybe some of this predatory targeting is going to get better. I personally feel like one thing that I'm seeing a lot of right now with retail is like, if you were, God forbid, you put something in a shopping cart, man, it just follows you everywhere across the internet. It is
Right.
just relentless. And like, I don't know if that's really a great experience. I understand that it's like a 1% or 2% conversion rate or whatever it might be, and that matters, right? We often think of that number like, wow, I got a 1% or 2% conversion rate on the cart, on the abandoned cart rate. But what's that experience for the other 98, 99%? So maybe this kind of evens the scales a little bit, and people feel less exploited. Thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big win here. The immediate win is for the consumer, and I think for the brands that lean into that and recognize that there can be a better consumer experience, and that results in better brand or company performance. I think that's the win, right? And to your point, you keep kind of talking about the problem of first and last touch attribution, which is kind of this, I don't want to call it a necessary evil, but a sort of the sorry state of affairs in a lot of cases, right? And there's a lot of marketing that happens in between that organizations just quite frankly they still struggle with how well those additional touches are working, right? So when somebody does a Google search and the Google search gets credit for that, gets that attribution credit, but prior to that Google search, there were 17 pieces of content, 14 tweets,
Right.
X's or whatever they're called now,
Right.
et
You
cetera.
actually go on there still?
You saw, you saw a TV ad and, listened to something on the radio and also saw X, Y, and Z, and none of that stuff gets properly credited because you're not really doing that kind of customer journey mapping and mapping media touch points against all the stages of the journey. So it is going to require marketers to be more diligent and sophisticated in terms of how they do that. And I think ultimately that's better for both the marketing strategy and the customer experience. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to actually move out of our first segment into the next. We'll be back with you in about a minute.
We're back. So I think like now we're going to start talking a little bit about first party data, if I'm correct. And I know you're going to lead this segment. Folks, by the way, I hope you're enjoying this. We're, again, trying to experiment a bit and get right down to brass tacks. Also, we're not going in as deep as we would like. Of course, we would be happy to chat with you about it. But again, if we're going to try to get this thing tighter into about 40 minutes or less, we got to move. So with that, let's get into that first party data problem and how that kind of gets to that first touch, last touch resolution with the customer journey and how AI factors in. My man.
Alrighty. So we've obviously addressed the fact that third-party cookies are going away, the access to third-party data and our ability to use it as marketers becomes much more difficult, if not nearly impossible in a lot of scenarios. So, of course, now the focus comes back to, as we've already said, first-party data, the data you as a brand own that your customers generate that clearly falls into your wheelhouse. Now, here's the challenge, right? That with good third-party data, you've got the world is your oyster, right? You've got the ability to understand your customer better, to personalize every marketing touch point better, to really customize the way you engage with them at different points across the entire consumer journey to create really great experiences. But the problem is the typical marketer today has a whole bunch of silos where data is hidden away in hidey holes, assuming you're even doing a good part of tracking data in the first place. So you're still using first-party cookie data on your website. You have to. It's required for a lot of the functionality. Like you can't run analytics on your website. You can't track a user. You don't know when somebody's been back or comes back or whatever. You can't do logins and registrations and operate a cart without cookie data. So you've got some data there, but the reality, I think, in most marketing organizations is you've got this very disjointed view of the entire customer relationship. Most organizations haven't mapped the entire consumer journey from end to end. They tend to take a very inward, out to out, sort of in to out approach. that the journey begins and ends with us as the company, not with the consumer who's out there doing all sorts of things with or without us. And then inside the company, we kind of struggle with silos, where the marketing organization might have campaign data, but the sales organization has sales data, the customer support department has customer support data, and all sorts of different things, whether it's the call center, email performance, content consumption, all of this, right? So that it becomes incumbent upon marketers to really wrap their arms around all of this. And how do you unify all of this data into a single usable data set to truly understand what the what the customer wants, what the customer is doing, how they behave, the things they believe, and how they're engaging with you as a brand today. So ultimately, it becomes incumbent upon the marketer really to do this, right? To do the hard work of creating a single integrated data set. And that also at a higher level requires the marketer to develop a proper understanding of the entire customer journey.
You nailed it.
On time.
You nailed it. Oh, man, that's awesome. Oh, man, God, this thing's killing me.
We're going to spend 25 minutes of this podcast trying to turn off the alarm.
We need a better answer for this. We'll get this next time, folks. All right, I'm gonna just turn this thing off. We're gonna have to MacGyver it. All right. So moving forward here, I think there's a really good point that you were kind of winding into, and it's kind of like one of my little pet peeves, which is data governance, right? Like, okay, we could talk all this stuff and unifying the data and getting it together and we do that all the time when we're talking with companies, right? But one of the things that we see a lot of is that when you get down to brass tacks with AI, and I'm not any better, most of us are very creative people. We tend to want to talk campaigns. You and I were talking about this right before we got on the pod. You raised this point, and I totally agree. We want to talk campaigns. We want to talk creative. We want to talk winning and percentage rates of success. But you tell us to unify our data and clean it up, and maybe, take out the trash while we're at it. I mean, that's just not exciting stuff, right? It's really kind of like the blocking and tackling of marketing, right? It's really hygiene. And if you get into most enterprises, usually it's kind of like this embarrassing moment when you talk about analytics, like, well, we really don't have it very unified. We haven't really updated our Google Analytics or even at that level, right? Like much less their CRM. Getting to like the real discipline of cleaning up a full CRM and all the data and putting it into one place is just a really, really rigorous, hard job. So it requires strategy and it requires formatting, first-party data collection. It also includes second and third-party data collection. How do we get that in? How do we know it's right? How do we know it's clean, not biased? You have to have some sort of help usually to get to that standard and also to clean up all that information because there's a lot of it. Consider a website and getting it all tagged correctly and getting all the metadata correct and getting it all documented and accessible in a database so that basically all the content can be indexed easily. That's a lot of work, right? That's a lot of manual work. And it's very rote. That's why marketers don't like doing this kind of thing. It's time consuming. And, also in most companies, data science teams govern this process, not marketing teams. And the larger the enterprise, the more, intra-department activity this is requiring. So the data governance thing, I think, is just like a big, massive kind of rock that you have to consider. And so when a customer journey and personalization strategy is identified, and it's time to put the wheels down and rubber hits the road, you really have to do the foundational work of unifying the data so that you can get to where you want to go. What are your thoughts on that?
So, you've covered a lot of things. I would like to kind of build on one thing you hit kind of in the middle there, which is the you can't do this alone factor. I think just like any of the sort of technology-driven transformational initiatives that are happening inside any company, this really comes down to the hard human stuff, right? That it's easy as a marketer to feel like you're in control of your creative campaigns, your ad spend, your marketing budget, even your kind of your marketing tech strategy. But this really does require marketers to reach out, become ambassadors to the organization, and that's hard work, right? You need to have you need to build the credibility, right? Credibility with your peers. It is political, to your point, right? I think marketers in a lot of instances I see feel like they have a sort of they've got a they're holding their hand, right? In the card game of business, because they own certain kinds of data and they control access to that data, and now they have to be thinking about, what do I give up in order to get? What do I give up in order to get access to the sales data, to get access to the customer service data, to get access to other kinds of, let's say, e-commerce data, for example? And how do we bring this stuff together? And how do I build bridges to my data science team? And how do I really effectively partner with the CIO who's been telling me no for 25 years? And then there's the other problem, which is, even in the best of circumstances, with all of that stuff going right, there is a real, practical, kind of frightening reality in a lot of organizations that the data has kind of been, what's the right word, sort of neglected over the course of decades, potentially, right?
It's like a house that's worn down. Right.
Exactly.
It's got all sorts of problems.
Right. So I think you can't underestimate the extent to which the CMO or a marketing decision maker needs to be sort of an ambassador for data governance, even if it's not traditionally something that would fall into their wheelhouse or even into their job description.
It needs to become that now.
Absolutely.
I read somewhere that I think it was one of the marketing recruiters in the area. They were talking about how the CMO is going to become a customer journey officer. I'm like, I don't know if that's true. The COO role seems more like what the CMO is going to evolve in, where they have to have this operational governance kind of approach, where they're a resource buyer and allocator, somebody that can get these relationships built and get that kind of information facilitated. And I think this is a good bridge to the next chapter, when we're going to talk about AI a little bit more. And, here we are talking about all this problem and all this real marketing issue. Notice that AI is a part of the solution, but it is not the solution. It is actually just really a bunch of tools that can help make this easier. For example, getting unstructured data correctly tagged and meta tagged. There are tools that are starting to emerge that can be used. Now, do you have to hire a professional services firm to do that? Does your data science team know how to use these tools? That kind of thing comes into play. And so it's not quite as easy as it would look. But, I think the good news is that, there are solutions and there are vendors that are starting to rise up to meet this need. The last thing I want to say before we move on to the next chapter is that this is a lot easier for retail companies, right? Like, retail companies have to have much more rigorous data hygiene to be successful, particularly if they're strong on the digital front. Not necessarily brick and mortar organizations, but them too. I think, like, the rest of the marketing world that I've run into, this is a real challenge. Like, most of the situations are that broken house, that broken need. And so as a result of that, I would tell marketers, like, hey, man, this is really normal to not be in good shape. So taking progress and, like, setting a standard for where you want to take your data and then slowly getting there is better than not doing anything, because it's just like, if you get your windows replaced, that's fantastic. That's good progress this year. Next year you can do the roof, right? Just keep moving through, and don't get intimidated by the, oh my God, we have to do this whole thing. Unlikely, unreasonable expectation, but moving a little bit, getting some forward progress is strong.
Yep. Progress over perfection every time, and let's see where it takes us, right? Speaking of takes and taking, let's take a quick break. We're going to move into our third chapter and really kind of get a little bit deeper into where AI plays into all of this.
All right, we're back, and we're getting into our final segment, which is going to be on AI and ML and how machine learning comes to the rescue here. I tongue in cheek call this the revenge of ML because everybody's like, oh, AI has arrived. Gen AI is everything. And of course, I'm probably as guilty as anybody with that. It's very exciting, particularly for creative people. But, ML has been around for quite a while, this automation of analytics and AI assisted data cleaning often involves deduping information across data sets, resolving conflicting data sets, information errors, understanding what uncertainties are there within the data set, and providing some sort of a recommendation or a higher probability program to fix those problems. So Gen AI can be used in this, by the way, as a data cleaning app to help fill in missing information, but it's usually informed with ML, and ML often trains the generative AI. So you've got some complex AI models. And the biggest barrier here is all the unstructured data from content, maybe customer feedback, freeform text, imagery, audio, video, all that. And that requires some human guidance to orchestrate resolving those data sets, training the AI, checking the AI. And, the good news is it's becoming easier. LLMs are making that a lot more accessible to us as marketers. And ideally, when we get to this point and we are better able to understand our customers, we'll be able to look at a journey, look at somebody's data set, and hopefully personalize that. And now personalization is like a holy grail thing, right? Like, you remember the one-to-one marketer thing from the early 2000s?
Probably even earlier than that, yeah.
Maybe the late 90s, right? So one-to-one marketing is a pipe dream for many marketers. Is it realistic now? It's becoming more so. But to get there, we have to really generate unique content for each person. And so I think when you have frameworks for the way content is supposed to sound or look or feel, and then you can customize based on somebody's unique preferences, maybe based off of preferred colors, maybe cultural background, race, even skin color. We see this now with some consumer products where we'll market different color Band-Aids, different color clothing to different groups. This is all now possible with Gen AI. So personalization is definitely coming to the party. I know I'm running out of time, Greg, so I'm going to pass to you.
Yeah. I think there's two things as you were speaking that I was thinking about, which is, given the extent to which marketing and marketers have focused so heavily on generative AI as if it is this wholly new thing that, is upending everything all at once. I think the distinction between an AI system, a Gen AI system, a machine learning application, et cetera, like that distinction starts to go away because all of these things need to work together, right? Generative AI is great with things like pattern recognition, but without solid underlying machine learning models that are being applied against your hopefully robust data set, it's nothing but undifferentiated data, right? And you're not going to get the kinds of insights you need. But the thing that really jumped out at me in terms of what you were talking about, and I'm kind of riffing here and taking it to like the next level, I guess, but I think you touched on it a bit, is all of this is for naught if it isn't for the right marketing strategy, right?
Right, those frameworks, right?
Right, at the end of the day, like there has to be an underlying set of marketing fundamentals, right? You need to be thinking about how well do we understand the customer? Have we actually mapped our customer journey? Because that for years and years and years, I remember Brian Solis years ago, for example, I think he was still with Altimeter Group at the time, railing against how brands had not actually mapped out the entire customer experience, even just the digital experience. And we know experiences are not strictly digital. They're digital, they're physical, they're everything in between, right? And I think a lot of brands still struggle with that, truly understanding what the consumer is doing at what stage of a journey, what their jobs are to do, and what we need to provide to them in terms of that personalized experience that actually makes a difference for them, right? So it's understanding your customer better, and of course that goes to data, but it also goes to the human effort of actually mapping that out. Do we have the right strategy for engaging them? Are we being truly creative with the way we apply what we know about the customer and their needs in order to put something meaningful and engaging in front of them? It's all of this sort of old school marketing stuff, right? Where it's always been sort of like you kind of tip back and forth. It's like a pendulum. Like you're either too creative or you're just data driven, and then everything becomes rote and machine like and mediocre. And it's like, how do you bring these things together to really be data driven in your decision making, let's say, but truly creative in the way you apply the data to make a difference in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, if you're a lousy marketer, this isn't going to help you. You're going to basically be like a terrible carpenter with power tools, which means you're going to punch a lot more holes in the wall. Yeah, that's what I do too. That's why I'm not allowed to have power tools anymore. But like all jokes aside, I mean, the reality is the fundamentals are still the fundamentals. AI, and I think this is maybe one of the reasons like why we kind of started the No Brainer, and kind of our take on AI is generally like it's really a great set of tools to help people. But we both believe in that kind of human co-piloted. I'm not really a big subscriber to this is going to replace marketers. What I do think is if you're a data-driven marketer only, this is definitely a dangerous moment for you, because this is going to do it better than you. It's going to see abnormalities. It's going to see successes in the customer journey that the data analysts have been missing, right? And all these data-driven CMOs that still don't understand what their customer journey looks like are going to have to like embrace the power tools to get where they ideally were hired to go to, and allow the tools to be better than them, or it's going to be a big kind of come to Jesus moment, pardon my French. And as a result of that, I think that people have to see what these things are really good at, how they kind of augment our skill sets, and then play to our strengths, which is creativity, which is operational, which is playing the politics, which is resourcing and all that kind of thing. So from a strategic standpoint, I run a good operation as a marketing leader. And that's where I need to focus and let these tools do what they do best and guide them so that they meet my strategy. I'm not going to let them be my strategy.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like that in a way leads us towards the end of the show and into like a brainer, no brainer kind of scenario here, because that's, I think a recurring theme over the course of now our 25 episodes, it seems, is that AI is an incredibly powerful vehicle for achieving the things you need to achieve as a marketer, but AI is not in and of itself the entire answer, right? So that if you're, and I guess this would be the brainer, that you should be asking yourself how you can use AI to inform your customer journey, to help you make more sense of the data you have, to help you fill gaps and identify patterns in the data, and then also to drive the kinds of executions you maybe couldn't do before, like true one-to-one personalization. I don't believe we're quite there yet, but these tools are making it more possible than ever before, right? But at the end of the day, as a marketer, you need to lead. Don't expect AI to lead you. You need to decide how to use these tools in order to achieve the kinds of ends you're looking to achieve. And if right now the end is become a better user of first-party data because third-party cookies are going away, then you need to be thinking about what AI tools are available to help me achieve that objective.
Well said. Every time I hear somebody say that the personalization is happening now because of AI, or this is the wave of the future, to your point, I just imagine them chasing windmills, like they're Don Quixote, like, I'm going to get that, and it's just
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
You can
But
do a lot more than you ever could, but
it's still the holy grail, right? Like it's like, yeah, do we actually get there in our lifetimes? It would be really awesome.
yep.
I think it will, or by the end of our careers. Fortunately, we're old, so maybe not. All right. We're not that old. Okay, so let's get down to the no-brainer. Look, I think it's pretty obvious now. AI problems are data problems. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if your data's a mess, it's going to be problematic. And now we're getting forced into positions where data is necessary. So garbage in, garbage out. Lock in, get your basic blocking and tackling done, going back to the Super Bowl reference to start. And no matter what your strategy is, you can focus on data governance and cleaning and make progress. So it benefits your organization to take this first-party data moment and focus the whole company, the enterprise, the marketing team, all your players on making sure that we're moving towards a cleaner data hygiene state of being.
Awesome. And with that actually brings us to the end. Did we get in under like 3.5 hours? Did we meet our 3-minute marks? We kind of did, I think, for the most part. But certainly
we ended up under 45. Pretty good.
Certainly. As we said at the outset, we are looking for feedback, the kind of feedback that helps us make this show better for you. So please be sure to visit nobrainerpodcast.com. Hit an email link and let us know what you think. If you're too lazy to go to nobrainerpodcast.com, you can use hello@nobrainerpodcast.com and just email us straight without ever having to see our website. But we know you're not lazy. We know you work hard for us and help us to get the word out about the show. So please be sure to like, to comment, to share, to rate, to review, to do all those kinds of good things so that we can keep bringing this kind of content to folks like you and getting in front of people who might benefit from the conversations we have every couple of weeks about AI and marketing. So I think that brings us to the end of the show, if I am not wrong, Mr. Livingston, I presume.
That's correct. What's your favorite Taylor Swift album, by the way?
Oh, they're all my favorites. It's so hard to pick one.
You're so lying. I can't stand her either. But I do like 1989. I can't help it.
Grayson actually is he's becoming a Taylor Swift fan. He's not big into music at all, but he's heard a couple of Taylor Swift songs recently, and it's been like, I like that song. So I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I will say Olivia, my daughter, as you know, she's like 20 now, even from the early days, has not been a Taylor Swift fan. So, some people love her, some people shrug their shoulders, and we're just two old men, so it's probably not our place to even have an opinion on the youngins' music.
I will say that my little punk rocker Leo, who is a heavy metal bassist, absolutely basically cringes at the name drop of Taylor Swift. Just like, it's pretty funny. Anyway, thank you all, folks. Appreciate it, and have a great day.
Take care.